Hello everyone, and welcome to day 22 of Space News. My name's Mike. I'm super excited to have you here today. We're going to go through three articles. The first, Chinese launch startup Orienspace secures $83.5 million. The second, startup pitches AI tool to prevent Pentagon procurement blunders. And last but not least, Payload research, the space cybersecurity landscape, and zero trust protocols. It's going to be a great show for you. Like, subscribe, leave some comments down below. It really helps me out. Let's get started. Chinese launch startup Orienspace secures $83.5 million. Okay, this was the same space startup that was launching rockets off of ships. We watched a video of this launch 2-3 days ago. So Chinese firm Orienspace announced a Series B funding round shortly after its successful debut launch, as China moves to nurture its growing commercial space ecosystem. If there's any company or any country that can compete with the American tech ecosystem, it's China currently. I know India has some space companies, some launch companies coming up, Germany as well, Japan. But China's really the major player to compete with the Americans in the 2020s, 2030s. Orienspace announced the funding round worth nearly 600 million yuan, January 24th. Investors include the Langxi Science and Technology Innovation Industry Fund of Funds. That is a mouthful, and a series of other funds. So these funds will be used for research and development of its first liquid propellant rocket. We talked yesterday about how the latest CLPS mission, a mission going to the moon, was using a new liquid oxygen mix. So there was the Peregrine mission in January, and then the mission that launched yesterday was the Intuitive Machines vehicle. So the Intuitive Machines vehicle uses a methylox mix, liquid methane, liquid oxygen, and that for that sort of vehicle was quite new. So here this Orienspace release is talking about how the funds will be used to research and develop its first liquid propellant rocket. The 60-meter tall, 4.2-meter diameter Gravity 2 will use 9 100-ton thrust Yuanli's 85 gas generators, variable thrust kerosene engines for the first stage, and be supported by solid boosters. So if we zoom in on this a little bit, so Orienspace rocket. So I will get us the Falcon 9 also has 9 engines. Am I surprised that there's some copying going on? Not really. I'm sure the math works out. A full hot fire test of the 85 is expected in the first quarter of 24. The first engine rolled off the production line in Wuxi City. Orienspace announced early Friday. I'm going to be mixing up Orienspace with Orienspace, which is the French launch company. Notably, one of the new investors is backed by Wuxi authorities. The company says the rocket will have a payload capacity of 25.6 tons. So it's 26,000 tons. It's approximately 1-to-1, even though it's 1,016. Falcon 9 capacity is 25,000 kilograms, so it has the equivalent capacity to the Falcon 9. The company will have a payload capacity of this, 19.1 tons to a 500 kilometer sun-synchronous orbit. That was 25,000 to LEO, 19,000 kilograms roughly to 500 kilometer SSO, or 8,000 tons to geostationary transfer orbit. Gravity 2 aims to operate at a similar price per kilogram as the SpaceX Falcon 9. It's a very similar rocket. That doesn't surprise me. The first Gravity 2 launch is planned for 2025 or 2026. It will be interesting when this gets released if this pushes down the price of Western launches. There's definitely a regulatory gap between the two countries. What I mean by that is if I'm in a North American company, I'm not sure I'd be allowed to launch some of my technology on Russian or Chinese rockets. Although saying that, I have heard of Western companies launching on it from Russian bases before. So maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'd be mostly worried about the implications of your ITAR technology, which for those of you interested, ITAR, or the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, is something that's slapped onto quite a bit of Earth observation technology, radar technology, anything that could be used for military purposes to prevent certain countries' technology from getting into the hands of other countries. And so if I have that on my satellite, I'm not sure I'd be allowed to launch from a certain country's base. If you know, let me know in the comments. Maybe you have more experience with this. So the funding announced followed closely after a spectacular first launch of Gravity 1, large, all-solid rocket from a Mobile Sea platform on January 11th. That launch, Orienspace revealed after the event, carried a 3-ton prototype low-cost cargo spacecraft as a mass simulator, as well as the satellites inserted into orbit for customers. Awesome. So let's watch this video and then move on. We are at 8 minutes. Yeah, this is the video we watched the other day. Wow. All right. Startup pitches AI tool to prevent Pentagon procurement blunders. So company says that AI can flag risks in procurement by analyzing historical data. Let's get to that. The US military is exploring a range of artificial intelligence capabilities, from predictive maintenance of ICBMs to analyzing reams of satellite data. This creates opportunities for AI startups like Virtulytics, which has won Air Force and Space Force research contracts and is offering an AI tool that could identify vulnerabilities in procurement programs by analyzing historical data and predicting potential issues before they rise. I know maintaining the ICBMs is very difficult. You have thousands of sites, thousands of missiles. The technology is very old, so if you want someone to maintain and or slightly upgrade your software, you need to hire someone that essentially can write assembly. There are a lot of people that can do that, embedded developers like myself, but you're not going to be using the tools of today. It will be the tools of yore, and that will make everything much, much slower. And there's kind of high stakes on the line because you are writing and maintaining software for the nuclear launch capabilities of the Americans. So Kyle Rice, Chief Technology Officer at Virtulytics Federal Business, said that he heard Space Force leaders talk about the need for improvements in how the service acquires satellites and other systems, and believes that AI tools can help. Okay. Can uncover patterns in contracts. Sure. Do they tell us more about what they're looking for? Patterns in contracts is quite vague. So the Virtulytics has a contract with the Air Force to use the company's platform to predict maintenance needs for the fleet of Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles. I wonder what the complexity is, kind of around this. Can you not predict maintenance based off of does a routine schedule not work? Does maintenance once every 6 months not kind of cover all of your bases? Is that too little? Is it too much? What inputs they are going to be providing in order to identify whether or not something needs maintenance? Under a separate contract, the Air Force Global Strike Command is using the AI platform for predictive maintenance of the nation's bomber aircraft fleet. That's a hell of a name. Air Force Global Strike Command. That sounds like a video game. The technology helps identify maintenance needs and potential equipment failures. AI and DoD, not surprising. By uncovering hidden trends and red flags associated with vendors, projects, or technologies, the Pentagon could save millions of dollars. Millions of dollars to the Pentagon is a rounding error. Ideally, they would say billions. I mean, if you're going to be paying a company probably $25-50 million to take on a project like this, there better be a good chance that they can save you an order of magnitude what you're going to be paying them, or else why take the risk? You can determine that this project may be going off the rails because they are doing certain things that are not associated with successful on-time delivery. Again, without understanding or knowing what the inputs and the outputs are exactly, it's difficult for this to be a useful article. Can AI be trusted? We'll leave that to the nerds in the labs. Let's move on. Payload research, the space cybersecurity landscape and zero trust protocols. Society's demand for space-based data has fueled growth in the space industry with 10,000 satellites in orbit. On top of all that, hardware grows an even faster network of interconnected data, software, and mesh networks working in concert with other connected devices to converse and compute. So we're talking about IoT, we're talking about the satellites talking to each other in space, which is something Starlink does. The data exchange in space presents a near infinite number of attack surfaces. And with society's data infrastructure and national security interests increasingly intertwined with space-based data, cybersecurity vulnerabilities have emerged. The growth of data exchanges and attack services on space networks has provided malicious actors ample opportunity to jam, spoof, hijack, or deploy ransomware on systems. Do we have examples of this? Beyond the business implications of a comprised device, national security, obviously, space weight and power constraints, bad actors, micro programs. So the growing volume of satellite multi-tenant programs increases the risk of cyber attacks and necessitates security at the data level. This is a good point, not to mix that up with SpaceX's transport or ride-sharing missions where they put multiple payloads on one launch. Here we're putting multiple payloads within a spacecraft bus. And so if your payload only needs to operate 50% of the time and it meshes well with the operational needs or the mission of another payload, you can just put them both on the same bus and they'll share access to one bus computer, and therefore there is another vector for someone to attack your computer. The Pentagon. Given the sensitive and mission-critical nature of national security satellites, any lapse in data flow could endanger our warfighters. Militaries all over the world have been continually integrating and improving the integration of their vehicles, whether it be fighter jets, tanks, with a larger kind of network infrastructure to allow for a more kind of synchronized battlefield. With data moving across networks, boundaries, and constellations, the Space Force has been investing in software-based encryption to fill in the gaps. Software-based encryption is always a temporary gap. It's only as good as the current hardware. Once, for example, supercomputers have become a thing, a lot of what were secure encryption protocols back in the day have been made completely obsolete. You can break them with these supercomputers in less than hours, probably minutes, making them useless. Whereas before, the computer that I'm currently shooting this video on couldn't break that protocol for 100 years. Cyber warfare. As traditional battlefields evolve, cyber attacks have become an increasingly popular weapon for state actors who can unleash asymmetrical attacks on critical space assets and communications. If I recall correctly, there was a power plant in the US that was hit by some form of cyber warfare recently. The Ukrainians were hit with some cyber warfare on their energy infrastructure years before Russia invaded. Russian cyber attacks. Viasat. Russia began its invasion of Ukraine by attacking Viasat's Ka-sat satellite network. So the day the troops invaded the country, Russia infected Viasat modems with a malware update, cutting service to tens of thousands of Ukrainian customers. Starlink. As the invasion unfolded, Russia stepped up its cyber warfare campaign to include the Starlink network. So Musk said some Starlink terminals near conflict areas were being jammed for several hours at a time. The latest software update bypasses the jamming. Oh, I'd love to see this game, this dance, this tango. Russian forces were jamming radio frequencies by sending up signals stronger than terminal ones, interfering with satellite transmission. Later that month, Musk also reported Starlink hacking attempts. Wow. Chinese cyber threats. The U.S. intelligence has determined that along with jamming capabilities, China is building tech capable of hijacking satellites, which could disrupt the Pentagon's surveillance, missile tracking, and military comms abilities. Leaked CIA documents warned that these cyber weapons are more sophisticated than those used by Russia. Okay, so we will end off with zero trust architecture. This is where zero trust comes in. In a zero trust architecture, all trafficking users, irrespective of their origin, are treated as potential threats. Decentralized security and cryptography are employed to ensure that each data record is secured individually. This data remains safeguarded even if there is a security breach at the network level. The zero trust architecture includes rapid rotation of encryption keys, endpoints that can dynamically and securely negotiate keys with each other on demand. And even if an intruder manages to access the network or the keys, the locks can be swiftly changed, rendering the data inaccessible. Payload Space provides a space cybersecurity and zero trust report. Well, maybe I'll sign up and we'll have a look at that. Thank you so much for sticking around. My name's Mike. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk on Monday. Ciao for now.